This is gonna blow your mind. Welcome to Matrix Hub Updates. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification icon for the latest insights. Beneath the waters of the Philippine archipelago lies a secret waiting to be unlocked. For decades, vast reserves of oil and natural gas, especially in the West Philippine Sea, remained overlooked. Now, a new awareness is emerging. Energy self-sufficiency is within reach, and the nation stands on the brink of transformation. Not just a dream, but a real possibility, thanks to geological surveys and exploratory drilling pointing to world-class reserves, particularly in areas like Reed Bank. Tapping into these resources will demand advanced technology, massive investment, and geopolitical stability. The rewards, economic strength, energy independence, and national pride, benefits that could reshape the Philippines. For a country long burdened by energy imports, the benefits are clear and immediate. Billions currently spent on foreign oil and coal could instead fuel domestic development in infrastructure, education, and healthcare. A local energy industry would generate substantial revenue through taxes and royalties, create thousands of jobs, and attract vital foreign investment. Yet, dependence on imports leaves the Philippines vulnerable to volatile markets and global crises. Developing domestic natural gas, a cleaner transitional fuel, would not only strengthen energy security but also advance environmental goals. The government is taking steps, offering new service contracts, revising fiscal frameworks, and streamlining exploration processes to attract investors. But the road ahead is steep. Geopolitical tensions, especially China's expansive claims in the West Philippine Sea, pose a serious obstacle. Despite the 2016 Hague ruling invalidating Beijing's 9-line, Chinese vessels continue to challenge Philippine sovereignty, deterring exploration and raising risks for investors. The issue is bigger than resources. It's about upholding international law and freedom of navigation. Here, the Philippines leans on its alliances, especially with the United States. Manila's strategy must combine principled engagement, coalition building with like-minded nations, and possibly joint development agreements that align with Philippine law and UNCLOS. Domestic challenges add another layer. The immense costs of deep-water exploration, the need for infrastructure, equitable revenue distribution, and environmental protection. Success will require transparency, strong governance, and sustainable planning. Despite these hurdles, the vision is powerful. A Philippines with secure, affordable, and homegrown energy. Achieving this would shield the nation from external shocks, fuel long-term economic growth, and strengthen its geopolitical standing. The road will be long and complex, but the promise of a self-reliant and prosperous future makes the journey worth taking. The dramatic shutdown was years in the making, a slow burn of rising tensions between the US and Canada. Trade disputes escalated, turning minor squabbles into economic warfare. The Alaska Highway closure was a bold move, with real consequences for families and businesses. At the heart, softwood lumber and maple syrup, symbols of a fractured partnership. The Alaska Highway is not just any road, it is a symbol and a necessity. Built during World War II, its official name is the Alaska-Canada Highway, or ALCAN. Its construction was a joint effort, a monumental feat of engineering designed to connect Alaska to the rest of the United States through Canada. It was built for military purposes to defend against a potential threat in the Pacific. But since the war, its purpose has evolved. It has become the primary land route for everything and everyone moving between Alaska and the lower 48 states. It is, quite simply, the lifeline of the North. A ribbon of asphalt stretching over 1,300 miles through some of the world's most rugged and beautiful terrain. Closing this highway is a logistical nightmare for the United States. Alaska is unique. It is a massive state, rich in resources but geographically isolated. While some goods can be transported by sea or air, these options are far more expensive and time-consuming. Shipping by sea from Seattle to Anchorage can take several days and is subject to weather delays. Air freight is even faster, but is reserved for the most urgent and high-value items due to its cost. The highway allows for the steady, reliable flow of everyday goods, groceries for the supermarket, construction materials for new homes, and parts for essential machinery. The impact of the highway closure was immediate and severe. Within days, the first signs of trouble appeared in Alaskan grocery stores. Shelves that were once full of fresh produce, lettuce, tomatoes, berries, started to look sparse. While Alaska produces some of its own food, it relies heavily on trucks to bring in a wide variety of fresh goods from the south. With the main land route cut off, stores had to wait for expensive air freight or slow-moving barges. Prices for basic items began to climb. A carton of milk, a loaf of bread, a head of lettuce, all saw price hikes as retailers passed on the increased transportation costs to consumers. Panic buying began in some areas, as residents worried about how long the shutdown would last. The human toll was just as immediate. At the border, a small community of stranded travelers quickly formed. There were families in RVs, their summer vacations cut short. They were stuck in small towns in the Yukon with dwindling funds and no clear way forward. There were truck drivers with loads of everything from frozen fish to household goods, their delivery schedules in tatters. One driver, a man named Dave, told reporters he was hauling a truck full of building supplies for a new school in Fairbanks. The political response to the crisis could not have been more different. In Washington, President Trump reacted with characteristic fury. He took to social media, firing off a series of posts calling the shutdown a disgraceful and hostile act by a weak Canadian government. He threatened massive new tariffs on all Canadian goods, promising that Canada would pay a big price for its actions. In press conferences, he was defiant and angry, framing the closure as a personal betrayal and an attack on the American people. His response was one of outrage and escalation, promising a swift and powerful retaliation that would force Canada to back down. In stark contrast, Canadian Premier danachura remained calm and resolute. In a televised address to the nation, she spoke in a measured and deliberate tone. She explained that the decision was not made lightly, but was a necessary response to years of failed negotiations and escalating American tariffs. She framed the action not as an attack, but as a defense of Canadian sovereignty and economic interests. The conflict between the United States and Canada did not go unnoticed by the rest of the world. Global leaders and international media watched the unfolding crisis with a mixture of alarm and fascination. For many, the dispute was a startling example of just how quickly relations between even the closest of allies could deteriorate in the current political climate. European nations in particular saw the showdown as a cautionary tale. They had their own trade disputes with the Trump administration, and were watching closely to see how Canada's hardball tactics would play out. The European Union issued a statement calling for restraint and a return to dialogue, urging both sides to resolve their differences through the World Trade Organization. Major economic powers in Asia, like China and Japan, also paid close attention. China, itself locked in a long-running trade war with the United States, saw the US-Canada dispute through a strategic lens. Some analysts in Beijing viewed it as a sign of weakening American influence and the fracturing of Western alliances. State-controlled media in China highlighted the conflict as evidence of the unreliability of the United States as a partner. With the Alaska highway closed and no sign of a breakthrough, the question on everyone's mind is, what's next? The highway shutdown is a powerful tool, but it's not the only one Canada has. Premier Chura's government is likely considering a range of other options if the United States refuses to negotiate or chooses to retaliate further. These potential next steps are designed to increase the pressure on Washington, targeting other areas where the U.S. is vulnerable. The goal would be to make the cost of the trade dispute just too high for the White House to ignore, forcing a return to the bargaining table in good faith. One of the most significant levers Canada could pull involves energy. Canada is the largest foreign supplier of energy to the United States, providing vast amounts of crude oil, natural gas, and electricity. While a complete shutdown of energy exports is unlikely due to long-term contracts and the devastating economic impact it would have on both countries, Canada could take smaller, more targeted actions. For example, it could slow down or halt approvals for new pipeline projects or impose an export tax on oil and gas. Even the threat of such actions could send shockwaves through energy markets and put immense pressure on the U.S. economy. Another area of leverage is pre-clearance operations. Beyond the high-level politics and economic strategies, the Great Northern Freeze is, at its heart, a story about people. It's about the individuals and families whose lives have been turned upside down by a conflict they have absolutely no control over. In the small town of Tok, Alaska, a community that sits near the Canadian border, the shutdown has been devastating. The town's economy relies on the constant flow of traffic along the highway. Now, the motels are empty, the cafes are quiet, and the gas stations are seeing just a fraction of their usual business. A local motel owner, a woman who has run her family business for 30 years, said she's had to lay off most of her staff. "We've survived harsh winters and wildfires," she said, "but I don't know if we can survive this." The crisis has also separated families. Consider the story of a young couple, Sarah and Ben. Sarah is a nurse working on a temporary contract in a Whitehorse hospital in the Yukon, while Ben works on an oil field in Alaska. As we stand here today on September 12, 2025, the future of the US-Canada relationship is more uncertain than at any time in recent memory. The Great Northern Freeze has pushed both nations into uncharted territory. The immediate question is how this standoff will end. Will President Trump's administration escalate the conflict with more tariffs, forcing Canada to retaliate further? Or will the economic and political pressure, especially from Alaska and other border states, force a change in strategy and a return to diplomacy? The path chosen in the coming days and weeks will define North American relations for a generation. The stakes could not be higher. This is not just about a highway or a trade dispute. It's about the stability of the world's largest trading partnership. The US and Canada trade over $1 billion in goods and services every single day. A prolonged conflict threatens to unravel this deeply integrated economic relationship, costing jobs and hurting businesses in every state and province.